Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Integrity, your partner for life. Integrity recently launched an exclusive research paper to help advisors understand how to attract and retain new clients. They believe their role in the industry is bigger than just providing products. They want to help create a sustainable industry, educate clients, and support advisors personally in their business. You can get a copy of the report and learn more about Integrity if you visit integritylife.com.au/XY.
Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and today I am joined by two absolute legends in the XY community. Emily Blanch, welcome, and Danni Visser, g'day.
Thanks, Fraser, for having us.
Hey, Fraser. Great to be here.
Fantastic.
Having a little crew chat today.
Absolutely. We're actually recording this in the same room, in the same location, almost like we used to years ago, before all the change took place. So, really cool to be in the same room and chatting about the same thing. Now, we're talking today about the whole concept of best practice. We're covering all sorts of things around client experience and communities. So, let's get cracking, I guess. Danni, let's start with you because you're new to
I'm
the
new kid on the block. Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I have joined XY from Zurich. So I had 5 years at Zurich, and my role there was really to spend time in advice firms and look at what they did in different parts of the business and then report on those and say, look, this is what drives success and this is what we see works well and these are the challenges. So it was all about helping our advice partners back then really understand and then embed best practice. And then before Zurich, I spent the 5 years before that in Macquarie. So 10 years, and it's a little bit of a different crew now. Yeah,
exactly. And so a lot of work in corporate land. Let's call it corporate land, and looking at practices. I mean, you were judging the awards, Advisor of the Year and Practice of the Year awards.
Yeah, I was, Fraser, and I think that's where your and my paths first crossed. It was really, I had a great job because I had the privilege of being able to spend time in really great firms and see all their areas of their businesses. And I got to observe what worked, what they were doing really well to enrich, I guess, the lives of their clients, and also what challenges they were having. And then I could sort of go to another business and figure out, what they were doing really well, what they were struggling with, and then connect people who had a pain point and a solution. So, it was a really rewarding job, and I got to meet a whole range of great people in that particular role.
Yeah, and how much of business is just around addressing pain point solution, something to solve?
Well, I think, in the businesses I spent time in, they were often high-performing firms, and they really spent a very huge amount of their time diving really deeply into who was their audience. And they would really profile that audience very, very deeply to understand what, kept them up at night, what made them happy, emotionally, logically. And then they would really build their entire offer around those particular insights. So for the businesses that were outperforming, what I observed is they'd spend a huge amount of their time really mapping that pain point process for their particular clients. So I think that's becoming more and more prevalent now. Everyone's sort of catching on to that. But look, that's been something the great firms have been doing, for at least as long as I was in the tent at Zurich.
Yeah, I think it's no surprise that the human emotion side of it is definitely where you find, the best relationships. And if you help solve an emotional problem, you're going to form great relationships as well as be valued in the relationship of what you're providing. You spend a lot of time chatting to financial planners, advisors during your course of the day, helping them solve problems.
Absolutely. Human connection is just a massive, massive part of what I do. I spend probably too much time online and chatting to advisors, but I would not switch it for the world. I have some of the most phenomenal conversations. I'm really ingrained in, similar to what you were saying there, Danny, of just really understanding what they are doing in their practices. And yeah, just over the course of the last, 4 years almost, I think I've been with XY. I've really gotten to know on a personal level so many advisors and really understand what they struggle with, what they want to get better at, what they want to improve in, and ultimately just build the content and resources and everything that you see within the XY ecosystem to help them solve those problems. So it's been a really, really interesting journey, and I've seen trends and things change over the years, and it's been a real privilege to be a part of that journey and to be able to support so many advisors fast track professional development, get to where they want to go quicker, and ultimately collectively drive the positive evolution of financial advice.
Fantastic. I love the way you got that in there. 4 years. Goodness me, you must be up for a long service leave shortly.
Oh, close. Who knows? We'll see. Yeah, it's crazy to say that actually. Like, it's really kind of flown by, and it's really evolved and changed. Like, if you had have asked me, would I be doing now what I am with XY even when it started? Like, I mean, that's a whole story for another day of how I came to be with XY, but it's been a crazy journey, but it's been amazing to see the progression and just know that what XY has been delivering is continuing to provide value, which is something we've said from day one, or at least definitely since I've been a part of it all, is that XY will continue while it provides value. And the resounding feedback we are getting from advisors is yes, keep going. We absolutely love it. We're getting so much from it. And so here we are.
Yeah, fantastic. And when you're chatting to advisors, is there any common themes across, problem solving that you're doing for them?
Yeah. So the number one thing I'm finding, especially as of late, that advisors are wanting to solve is that efficiency piece, which is obviously no surprise. A lot of industry changes coming, and just a lot of, with all of the fragmentation of the industry as well, there's so much choice, and advisors are kind of like, whoa, where do I even begin? How do I make sure I've got the best stack or the best processes? And how can I really nail that in my business to be able to do more of the client-facing, client experience stuff? Because that is where the absolute value is. So being able to crack the code on that, to be able to get back to doing all that client experience stuff, to really amplify things is the number one thing people
It's a really interesting word you use there, Em, because, value is something we hear so often, and very hard for some people to say, well, what is, articulate value. And I think what you're doing in advice practices is exactly the same methodology as I saw the really outperforming advice leaders doing, is that value is about understanding your audience and what are their problems and what do you need to help them actually solve. And so that works, that sort of logic works in any context. So yeah, as you were speaking, I just sort of picked up on that, and that was really interesting that it works at the same level. Yeah,
I reckon value is not up to the person who's providing it, but up to how it's being received. So it's to the values of the client or the customer, or it's their values that you're trying to get to, not your own values or the values of the business or what you perceive value of your financial advice to be, but the value they get out of it for them. So.
And your robustness about figuring that out, like how, Emily, you spend so much time talking to advisors, figuring out what their problems actually are in their businesses so that you can provide that sort of really built for purpose type content.
Absolutely. I get blown away. I've so many conversations and like learning something new all the time, and just even trust, like that's a huge part of it as well, is just like building that trust with people, which is the exact process advisors go through to build that trust with their clients to then be able to articulate and deliver that value. So I listen. I do a lot of listening. I have a lot of conversations. I ask a lot of questions like, hey, what is it you want to see? Or what are you trying to accomplish? And then I kind of take all of that stuff that I hear and then kind of distill that down and go, okay, well, what's going to provide the most amount of value? Because if that one person has that question or that problem, chances are 10, 15, 20, 100 other people have that exact problem, which is one of the reasons why XY exists, is to be able to have that collaborative environment so that when one person is looking to solve something, that information is shared, resources are there, no one's reinventing the wheel, and everyone benefits from it, which has been really cool. So, I can go down to the granular level, and some of the things that we've been doing on the platform is, if I think of especially some of the more recent stuff, we opened up a resources center. So we did have, and XY has been around for like close to 7 years, and there is hundreds of advisor shared IP. Like, it still blows my mind at how willing advisors are to just freely go, hey, here's a calculator I built. Hey, here's this template I built.
It works for me.
Stuff.
Have a go at it. Change it for how you need it. Yeah.
This concept, those in XY, this concept of holding their cards close to their chest, or saying, oh no, I'm not going to share. It's polar opposite. It's, hey, sharing is caring. And if I can, because the thing is, and one thing I come back to a lot is that we all have something to teach and we all have something we can learn. Like, there are things that you know, Danni, that I definitely do not. And there's things that I know that you don't. So it's not about who's the best or who's got the right way to do things. It's, how are you doing things? And, oh, hey, here's what I'm doing. This is what's working. This hasn't worked. Maybe it'll work for you. Give it a try. Because like you were saying before, looking at the businesses and the best practices and trying to find those trends, advisors, I look at advice businesses like Fingerprints, like no two are the same. Like, you could have two advisors who operate in the same niche but still have incredibly different ways they deliver that advice, coming down to understanding their clients. So collaboration, massive one. So having a dedicated resources center where an advisor can turn up to go and search for something they're looking for, and at the same time share as well, has been wildly valuable. They absolutely love being able to go in there and see how others are doing things and get inspiration from it. So yeah, the resources center has been a massive one.
I think the fact you break it down into different types of businesses and the different types of personas is really, really valuable as well, because you sort of touched on it there. There are so many uniquenesses within each business, and there are so many uniquenesses within their customers. And the businesses I certainly spent a bit of time with found that I found in those businesses, they really tried to delight someone rather than trying to work with everyone. And that's when I was looking at what very keenly as to what XY Advisor were doing. One of the things that I loved was that it's very specific to the type of advisor or where you are in your journey. There's something for everyone within that particular platform. Doesn't matter what type of advice you're actually delivering or what services you're offering. You can connect to people that are doing the same sort of, rather than just this big buffet of all of these options and you don't know where to actually find them. What I liked is it's very tailored based on the particular advice persona.
And it's really condensing those conversations in a way where you can go and get a fast and responsive answer. So when you have a problem, right, you go, okay, what's the first step? You either talk to someone in your office, you jump on Google, you can go to XY and get a open, honest, unfiltered, responsive answer like that, like really quickly from others who have gone through and done exactly that. So it's reliable, and you can go, great, awesome, I'm going to defuse this bomb right now, problem solved, move on to the next thing.
It's one of those participation things, right? Like, any community works really well when people are participating. And I think this goes, with any of the, association work we've all done in the past with the community. You come in with that scenario, like you said before, of giving, and everyone's come in with that scenario of giving something, and then obviously taking something away, but not from that idea of taking something away first.
Yeah, it's turning up with an attitude of like, what value can I add to this collective, and what can I learn and benefit from it? And when that's in harmony, it just hums. It's amazing. I've seen advisors launch businesses and post about it on XY and say that they never would have done it, or they would never have done it as quickly as they did if it wasn't for the XY community. I've seen advisors merge businesses, get into the industry, all sorts of stuff. And that's truly where the magic happens. And I say it so many times, but I have the privileged position of having that bird's eye view, to be a part of it all, to see it, to witness it, and then be able to share that, because it's one thing for me to see it, but my mission or my goal is to then share that message so that everyone benefits from it and gets to witness the same magic and be a part of that magic as well. So it's I think
really one of the advisors, quote unquote, said it was a honeypot. I really like that, it's this amazing, tank of things that you just didn't know could help you so much until you sort of lean in and have a look around. And
it's the honeypot, it's the brains trust, It's your phone a friend when you've got a tricky and sticky situation. It's your virtual business partner. Like, that's just a couple that I've heard, but people really lean into it. And especially for solo advisors, right? How many advisors are out there on their own grinding? They're wearing all the different hats and they're dealing, something comes up and they go, oh my gosh. And we all deal with it, right? Like, you get a problem and you go, oh, am I the only one struggling with this? Then to jump on and see that, oh my God, someone else has the same problem, that validation that you're not on the journey alone is massive. And I mean, just with obviously the pandemic last year and then Royal Commission and everything going on over the last few years, mental health has been a massive topic. And yeah, I've had conversations with advisors who have literally said X, Y has kept me going. Like, I've just been going in there for no other reason than to just see others discussing, see the energy in the enthusiasm that happens in there. And it reminds me why I started. And in amongst all of that, it gives me that push to keep going.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, just with the mental health side, we do have a podcast coming up very soon on that, the survey that came out, so stay tuned for that one. But I want to go back to the inefficiency and efficiency conversation that you sort of touched on a little bit earlier, and when it comes to best practice. You mentioned that that one of the problems that people are trying to solve is this efficiency conversation and the inefficiency process of finding the efficient process when it comes to both technology and staff. Which technology and staff tend to be the two big things we're looking for efficiencies in. Danny, obviously you've done a lot of work with these high performing businesses. Was there anything that they were doing in those spaces that were sharing?
Well, we recently did a piece of work where we benchmarked a whole heap of firms, around about 100. And we were looking for that because in the past there's always those things that stand out and you cut the data and you say, oh, well, this is the connective threads between the advice leaders that are doing some amazing things. And, it's been a really interesting environment. There's been this sort of enduring cavalcade of change that a lot of advice practitioners have had to weather. And when we did the last benchmarking that we did, we sort of expected a survival state type result, I guess. And what was really interesting is that there were this sort of little collective of businesses, and we referred to them at Zurich as outliers. And they sort of had these incredible results. And what was really intriguing about those results, and when we sort of dug into what's actually caused these results, we looked for things like tech, we looked for things like marketing strategies, we looked for things like, what are you doing to make your inner workings hum and super efficient? And we couldn't actually find any connective threads, which was a little bit of a uh-oh moment.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny when you get some data and you go, well, the demographics, we've got the demographics. You
can always get an average,
let's find the common link. And did you actually end up finding a common link?
Well, there wasn't a common link in the infrastructure as such. Like all of these businesses that sort of had these off the chart results in terms of the things we looked at was new client numbers and profit percentages continued over a few years, because we thought that was sort of like a good benchmark to check whether, people were resonating with their end audience and, were they operating in a profitable way. And for these particular businesses, they all looked very, very different. So we had a lot, 2-3 people businesses, and then we had your businesses sort of that had that enviable tenure and different services. So we couldn't kind of look at them and say, oh, these all look and feel the same, and this is the thing that you must do in your technology or your HR to make your business hum. And in the past, you could really say that. Like when I was at Macquarie, there were Macquarie benchmarking surveys, which were wonderful, and they would really draw those out. These were what the outperformers were doing. But I think the world is so different now. And what we found, we had to actually bring in some advisors to help us look at the data because we were at a loss. And we actually found it was when we spoke to the practitioners, we spoke to their staff, we spoke to their customers, we actually found it was their principles of operation rather than their internal stuff that was driving their success. And it's very interesting that the things that were driving these businesses to do really well were the fact that they knew who they wanted to work with. Like they could really tell you, rather than just a demographic, they could tell you like how that person was thinking, how they were feeling. They could also tell you, what are the problems that this typical person has? And then that business would take a lot of time to actually build a transformation journey. So they knew where that person wanted to be taken, And they had built their entire engagement around taking that person to where they wanted to be. So it was these sort of three key elements of their engagement that actually that all of these businesses that had these, you know, raving fans that they were all doing. And that was a really big shift, that the success was probably the North Star for everything. Wasn't, you know, the structure of their business, but it was their, do we genuinely believe if we build everything around a customer and their needs and we wrap everything around that and we keep breaking things to actually deliver to that, that's what was driving their success.
So you're saying that their product, if you like, was not necessarily advice or a service or all those, you know, things, granular things that we get involved in, but the transformation of a particular type of client from here to there, or a journey from here to there, that transformation journey was their product.
Yeah, absolutely. And they all did that in very different ways. And that's why they looked so different. And you couldn't say that you need to do this from an infrastructure perspective or this from a technology perspective. They all achieved that in different ways. And interestingly, in the environment, because they based everything around that transformation journey and that customer problems that actually kind of darted and changed their businesses well before they had to. Like I remember watching Craig in one of your sessions, Emily. He was talking about his business and how he like solved things before he had to. And so when regulation came in or when change was mandated, he'd probably changed months and months earlier, or years in fact earlier, because it's what his customer wanted, or it just made sense for their transformation journey or the problems that they had. So that's a very long-winded answer.
That's great. But I just want to pick up on that. So Craig came in and did a web event with them for the XY Plus members, which is the paid community group. Do you want to talk a little bit about that session?
Yeah, definitely. So just to give all the listeners just a bit of context if you're not familiar. So XY Plus is our optional paid membership. So it's for those that want to tap into perks and advantages over and above the general platform experience. And part of that, or one of the major perks with that, is hosting a weekly interactive web event. So every Thursday, 12 p.m, the Inner Circle jump on and we bring in coaches or people who work with advisors, and more often than not, actual advisors themselves, just like Craig, to come in for a really healthy dose of peer-to-peer learning. And those sessions are without a doubt the standout. Like, advisors love hearing and seeing what other advisors are doing. So Craig's session was amazing. Shout out to you, Craig. You're doing phenomenal stuff with your business. He came on and literally walked us through the process he had built for his risk business, took us through his entire journey. He basically took us through his transformation of getting to burnout a handful of years ago and then really taking a step back and reevaluating and say, if I'm going to do this, I need to make some changes. And he really put his clients or customers in the driver's seat of that. He sought feedback from them as well. And he had built this process that almost answered or did answer his customers' questions before they even had it to ask. So it was just this robust process that he had built, and it was just phenomenal to see. And everything you said there and your comment about being on the front foot, that's the trend I'm seeing with practices that are doing really well, is that they are really proactive. They're not waiting to see what happens and then go, okay, cool, now that change is coming, I have to do something. They're going, no, I'm shaking it up now. I'm going to get on the front foot and be proactive about this.
And just to take that a step further, certainly what I witnessed when I spent time in advice offices was that it wasn't that it was just a decision, oh, let's do a renovation on the business. It was that, well, the compass for every decision that we make is actually our customer. And if they're changing in a big way, we just have to. Like when businesses really believe in that philosophy, and they do, and you can tell the businesses that believe in that philosophy because they're running, like you do with advisors, and they're running focus groups with their clients. They're really understanding, how do we help your world? What problems do you have? How do we solve them? And they're doing that regularly so that they're not assuming. And when they find those big insights or something really changes in their particular audience's world, they just change. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you know, the systems are held together with a bit of, you know, super glue. And because they do continue to change the model and flex the model and just believe that the most important thing that we need to invest our time into and really put our hustle behind is delighting a particular audience.
But how good is it also when you have that collaboration process with your client and then they say, this is the thing we want? How quickly you go, yes, that's what we want. You might have been thinking about that for a long time. As soon as the clients come up with the idea and or yes, we want this. It's like, right, let's make that happen straight away. It's not it no longer becomes a wonder if I should do this thing. It becomes
And you really get buy-in from them too, because they're a part of your business and your process. Like they've, you know, when you're having those focus groups, like again, a couple of the businesses that I know who are doing really amazing things, they know their client inside and out. They know who they are, and it's generally a similar sort of cohort. So they're almost building communities themselves with their clients. So they're doing like, you know, you've got your lunch and learn sessions, but they're having small events and they've got Facebook
like Adele's
groups.
Saving Squad.
Yes, exactly. They've got Facebook groups. They're doing little in-person sessions and they're bringing their clients together for an education piece. But they really are bringing their own little communities together and asking questions. Is this valuable? What do you guys think? What's missing? And then when you get that feedback and the input, the clients feel valued, they feel heard, and they feel a part of that. And there's so much more buy-in, and the value is so much more prevalent to them that it just makes that journey like there is no need to have to sell or to convert or to get someone over the line. They are the ones that are lining up saying, I want to work with you.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. I've seen this trend happen over time is where, you know, the planners would always keep all of their clients separate. And obviously there was a privacy thing there and maybe a compliance issue. But the idea of bringing them into these small communities or groups or introducing, especially if you've got a specific, you know, target client in mind that you always look after, and they will have things in common. So to be able to create those communities within your client base.
And it can actually enhance, it can on-sell. Like businesses, it works in advice and outside of advice. Like if you look at Harley Davidson as a business, they were really struggling. They were struggling because they were a business that got through like the Great Depression. They'd sort of survived a long time, but then suddenly cheaper bikes started coming better, kind of, you know, tech bikes, cheaper bikes started coming in from Japan particularly, and they were about to go bankrupt. And, you know, Harley Owners Group is a really interesting example of one of those ecosystems where those, you know, the business stopped and said, we really need to understand who's going to love our stuff and why they're going to love it and what do we need to build. It might not be to do with bikes. It might not be to do with advice. What do we need to build to get them to really want to be part of our world? How do we become part of their world rather than lure them into ours? How do we become part of theirs? And, you know, the Harley Owners Group is a really interesting case study as a business because they realized that their audience actually wanted a bike as a hobby. They wanted to be involved in the development of a bike. And as soon as they built that avenue, the price didn't matter. The quality of the kind of tech didn't matter. And they had this rich source of insights of how to actually improve their product over time. And, you know, we can all, everyone in the world knows the Harley's Owners Group and how much that has like become a successful ecosystem.
And the word that comes to mind with that and everything we're talking about here is that sense of belonging. Like you are a part of something. Like I could spend all day connecting people in XY. Like I've had people call me and say, I am an employed advisor. I'm thinking about going out on my own. I had no idea where to start. I'm calling you because I'm 100% sure you've got to be the most connected person in financial advice at the moment. So I'm looking for X or I'm looking for this person. And then I go, cool, yep, sweet. I can already think of 5 people. And the real value comes in making those connections because clients' lives are changing. There's so much complexities. And there was a post on XY yesterday from an advisor saying, hey, I'm keen to expand or be able to offer not necessarily offer the services, but be able to help my client in other areas of their life rather than just their money. Like, if they're looking to get fit or do things like that, to be able to point them in those right directions. And so that's something that I do in XY all the time, and I see the value of it. Like an advisor I mentioned earlier who launched his business, I introduced him to a handful of advisors who I knew had just launched their own businesses. And when this advisor posted in the platform to say, hey, I want to give a massive shout out. He listed all of the advisors that I'd introduced him to. He goes, there was like 8 or 9 people. And he said, like, listed all of them. It was amazing, you know, and massive shout out to XY. So he really contributed that value to XY. And all we did was just do a few email introductions. Say, hey, you should go talk to this person. Hey, you should go talk to this person. So when your clients
You're introducing him to his tribe of people that can help him.
And people who are like him. So your clients, right, they're, especially if you've zoned in on who they are and you've got that cohort, they probably have similar issues. They're probably working through similar things. When you meet somebody that you go, oh my God, you've got the same problems, or we're at a similar journey. Oh, great. You get me. And then that bond is so tight, and the value is still attributed to the advisor because they facilitated that introduction. So this concept of being able to have these little community groups within your clients, very powerful.
That's fascinating you say that. And because I certainly see that working well in businesses who do have a really clear tribe, the referrals of those particular businesses are much higher. Mm-hmm. Because people like, you know, we have so many options, right? Everyone has so many options. You can deal with anyone at a click. There's infinite shelf space in the world now. So we can really find the people who we, you know, hyper connect with.
Yes.
And why would we want to deal with anyone else? So, yeah, it is really, it's really, really potent, and you can see those businesses that have a look and a feel. And Ben is certainly one of those, you know, advice businesses that have done incredibly well by understanding who he can serve the best, and then just tripling down on that.
Yep. And talk to us a bit more about the sense of belonging. Did you see any things in practice that were helping to form that sense of belonging for their clients?
I think, yeah, in sense of practice, I think once people understand who is their person and why their advice means something to that person, it then starts to come through in everything. Their vibe is, you know, very visual, but it's also visceral. It's in the way they talk. If it's truly believed, it becomes every part of their journey, and you can see it, and you can feel like Ben Nash is a clear example of that. Jessica and Glenn from Fox and Hare are a clear example of that. They have a distinct person who they know that they can help, and everything that they do, they say, their socials, their online presence, where they actually end up talking actually connects back to that audience, because you can't be all things to all people in any sense, and it's almost just becoming really potent with where are your efforts and energy is going to be best spent, so that you're attracting the people that are going to value what you do. I remember speaking to Phil Thompson actually, and he became very niche in his particular offer, and he mentioned something that's really resonated with me. It really increased his confidence as an advisor, because he said, I just knew that I could really help that person. And when he was doing a much broader range of things for a much broader range of people, it was like, just wouldn't have that inner confidence in, I know our team's going to deliver a wonderful end result and it's going to be a really great customer experience. But when he really honed in on what he did, how he did it, and who he did it for, that process he could invest in becoming very concise and very streamlined. And he could sit in front of a client, but also a referral source, and say, yeah, we're the best at this. We do this really well, and you should come and see us. And there's just that inner kind of confidence that came out.
Yeah, shout out to Phil Thompson. So this takes us to the specialisation conversation, right? And we just mentioned the two real types of specialisation: the specialisation around a particular strategy or product set, or the specialisation around a specific client or end client. So, there's always that conversation around specialization, and everybody sort of went straight towards the product side, not really thinking about the specialization around a client.
That's a really good point.
So, you're helping these advisors, and I guess from an XY point of view, and from your 4 years of knowledge point of view, we would come across a lot of things that or issues or problems that our advisors are trying to solve. How do we then, as a community and a host of collaboration, essentially solve those industries for for the greater good, or for the even all the way to the product providers, or the industry, or the regulations themselves? How do we push that up the stream, if you like?
Yeah, so collaboration just is that word that comes to mind, and taking it at that bottom up approach. Like I can speak from like XY experience, that community and the way advisors in XY have gone about solving their own problems. So a great example is the ethics committee, which I believe Nathan Fradley has or is coming on the podcast. And so this is a great example. A couple of advisors reached out to me and said, hey, we've realized that there is no one dedicated place we can go to for support when facing ethical dilemmas. So standard 12, everything coming in with there. There's a lot of grey area. And these advisors reached out and said, can we use XY as that place to create a peer support space to help other practitioners? And I said, absolutely, like 100%. So 3 advisors and myself got together and put out a call for applications, inundated with applications, which was amazing, and landed on a really great diverse number of committee members, so 8 in total. And that is 100% volunteer run ethics committee. So you can now go onto XY when faced with an ethical dilemma, and we see these appear on the platform in posts and questions every now and again, and submit that and have a peer reviewed ethical determination on how you could tackle that and solve that problem. And it just gives peace of mind and support and just confidence in the decisions you're making. So ground up, grassroots approach to how can we help each other solve an issue that exists in the industry that isn't going to come from the top down.
Yeah, shout out to Nathan, because obviously, if you haven't heard that episode, it was a couple of episodes ago, talking about that ethics committee. Amazing, development of that from, as you see, grassroots. You also work with a lot of, groups, a lot of licensees will run groups on the platform as well. Yeah,
so we've got a handful of licensees using XY as a place to drive collaboration and support for their advisors. So it just comes back to this concept of giving your people, your tribe, the ability to connect, to share and help each other so that we're not reinventing the wheel. Because, advice practices are like fingerprints. Everyone's different. They do their own thing. But there's a lot of similarities, or there's a lot of different things that people are trying to build and create. And just the concept of idea sharing in itself is so powerful. So there is a couple of boutique dealer groups. So shout out Cobalt Advisors. They have all 23 of their advisors in there, sharing resources, sharing contacts, asking questions, doing Loom videos for each other, sharing their templates and things. And it's just been amazing to see that level of collaboration allow them to do their job better, deliver better advice, and ultimately help everybody improve. So that's been a really, really cool thing to see and be a part of.
Having everything in one place is such an efficient thing, right? Because that's one of the struggles of is things are everywhere. There's probably great things everywhere, but having something in one spot where you just know you can go, I just think that's a huge value. And I think, it helps people do things quicker. So if you can do them, the stuff you have to do quicker, then you can spend the time that you've got extra delighting your customers and spending it on doing that human stuff.
And what is the thing that everyone's trying to grab a hold of? Extra time. So concentrating that, it's a one-stop shop. You can go and get fast responsive answers or things that you need to help in whatever it is that you are trying to solve. And it's, that's a massive draw cut. So I was chatting to the Cobalt guys actually, and I was checking in and how's it all going? They now send 0 group emails. None. Everything's housed in their group. They can access files, and it's
sounds like a dream.
It has created a level of efficiency for not just the advisors in there, but for the leadership team as well, because it's no longer this one-to-one conversation. It's a one-to-many. So one person, like I said before, when someone's got a question, chances are there's a handful of others who have that same question.
It becomes a really rich source of intellectual property as well.
Absolutely.
I can imagine, it just nothing gets lost. I think that's, there can be great ideas, but it's, it's not useful to anyone if no one can find it.
Exactly. Or something pops up that goes, hey, that's cool. I don't need it right now, but I will need that later on. And so everything's categorized. You've got resources. You can tag things and have topics. So it's easily accessible, and you can come back to it whenever you need to. You don't have to go and try and find an email thread or try and find something in an intranet or anything that's clunky. To be able to see them streamline that process and efficiency has been really, really cool.
Yeah, and now, Danny, now speaking of collaboration and grassroots and bringing this information, tell us about what you're doing about it.
So I think I'm probably attacking things from the other side. I've spent a lot of time in corporate and provider land, and look, I just know the great work that gets done for the advice community within those walls. There's a lot of people that work really, really hard to try and bring great solutions to the table, and I think what I'm really excited about in what I get to do is I just get to be able to hone those discussions where they're going to be relevant. So it's, again, that whole, it's kind of fits really nicely with what I've been doing anyway. It's about sort of saying, look, we know we have these profiles of different advice business types, make sure that you really understand that audience's problem so that when you bring solutions to the table, and there can be many different solutions, they're actually right for that audience. So you're not wasting their time. You're not trying to offer them something that they don't want. It's just about being really targeted, because I think at every level, people have less time. We have less resources in terms of sort of money to do the same thing. So if you can get super targeted and really understand the audience, really understand their true problems that they're having in a safe space. So it's not sort of like survey data, you get a small sample of the audience responding and, is that the audience you want? Well, no one really knows. So it's just around taking that effort that I know goes on in provider land and making sure that it really connects with a particular audience, and then the problems are really cleanly understood, because the problems change really quickly. So sometimes the problem with, we're able to source live data on problems as they're happening today, rather than saying, yep, here's the problems that were relevant 6 months ago. Well, the world changes in about a week. We've all seen that. We know that intimately. So, yeah, I think that's what really excited me about being part of the XY crew, is that I could sort of say, well, these are pain points, and if we can help solve those pain points, then absolutely we're contributing to the positive evolution of financial advice.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're going to be the voice of the advisors towards the corporate
collaborators,
end, the collaborators, the product providers.
Yeah, that's right.
Those who are able to,
saying this is what this is what the advice audience is really struggling with, whether it be efficiency issues, with whatever it is. There's a myriad of different things, but this is also what they're doing really well, and this is what's got working well. And if this is how you can best help, and who do you want to help, because you can't help. Every business is very, very different. So the one kind of, I've come from the land of insurance, right? So there was one product for a long time, like we like oneness, but it doesn't really work. In any market, it doesn't work well. So if we can get really clear on what type of the market you want to deal with, you can get clear on what problems that particular market has, then all the effort and the incredible intelligence that comes out of, corporate space can be used really in a really potent way. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, exactly. I guess from their point of view, when they're creating product, they're just making a lot of assumptions.
It's the ability to bring the advisor's voice into those meetings, into those brainstorming sessions. It's pulling a proverbial chair into those table meetings and saying, here is voice of customer, voice of advisor, in an unfiltered, open, honest way of, like, here are the problems.
Yep.
And that's being able to bridge that gap, because when you can do that well, it's a win for advisors, it's a win for clients, it's a win for the collaborators, like the industry wins, and that is where the magic happens.
Fantastic. Well, we might leave it there. That's exactly a great place to leave it, where the magic happens. So if you, bear in mind that when you do bring your issues or energy or ideas or anything towards the XY platform, it can actually help shape all things all the way through the system. So thank you, Brains Trust, for coming and having a chat today. It was really good to be in the same room and to catch up and then to chat with you guys.
So excited to be part of the crew. Thanks for letting me in.
Welcome, Danni. We are thrilled to have you on board. couple of LinkedIn posts have said that already, but we are genuinely really, really excited. And the enthusiasm and the energy that you've already brought has been amazing. So let's get stuck into it.
Feels like home. Thank you so much, Fraser, for having a chat with us too.
Well, there you have it, the XY Brains Trust, a special episode of the XY Advisor podcast. And now Emily's back. Welcome back, Em.
I am back again. You can't get rid of me.
That's the way. You're now such a regular. Tell us, so we're going to do the shout-outs part of the show, which we love doing. Who are we going to shout out to?
Yes, so let's give a shout out to Andrea Jenkins. She jumped on with me, actually. We caught up and had a conversation, and she was very generous in sharing her top tip for changing licensees. So really topical at the moment. I know advisors are jumping in wanting to get information or what to look out for when switching licensees. And Andrea jumped on and gave us her top tip, which really centered around being rigorous with your non-negotiables. So it was a great, quick 4-minute video. We posted it on the platform, and I know it's helped plenty of people so far. So just wanted to give Andrea a big thank you for being generous with her time, sharing her value. I know it's helped lots of other people.